Welcome to the first episode of a brand new podcast called The Truth About Addiction. What I'm basically doing is having an honest as fuck conversation about what addiction looks like, what it feels like, and for the love of God, finally explaining to the normal person why addicts continue to work the 12 steps and go to meetings for the rest of their damn lives. Just a secret. It's because we have to, unless we want to go batshit crazy. I'm not trying to be batshit crazy. You know what I'm saying? So what we're going to do on this podcast is a one-on-one interview, probably with people who are sober, but not always. A one-on-one interview to hear their story, their relationship with addiction. Once we get through the story, we're going to put a spotlight on something specific and then talk about how that addictive part of them shows up in that part of their life. And then we will end with a few really special questions. My first guest is my very best friend from the rooms of AA. I love her so much, and I cannot wait for you guys to meet her.
So tell me what you need, and tell me where you bleed, and I will listen. I can listen. Oh, I will listen to you.
Everybody, welcome to The Truth About Addiction, a brand new podcast that I wanted to start because I feel like all these years into my recovery, people still have so many questions about what happened. What is being sober like? Do you have any fun? Is it hard? You actually still go to meetings? What the hell? And I really want to be able to demystify it and also just speak honestly about it on a more public platform. Cause like my most favorite thing on earth is to speak honestly about everything. And I thought, who better to bring on for my very first one, other than my very best good friend, like, Bubba Gump had his best good friend, Erin Burrows. I love you so much. My sober soul sister. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be your guest, your first guest. And I just love what you said. I love you. I'm so happy to, have you as my best good friend. And I love the intention behind the episode and the series, the podcast series, the word demystify really stood out to me as you were speaking. And yeah, I mean, 100% demystify the questions and the myths and the shame and because it's a lovely life.
It sure is. It sure is.
Yeah.
And also just a fun little story that you and I were together at the Ojai Valley Inn, living our best sober life on this amazing little sort of vay staycation, and bumped into a girl whose name was Samantha, by the way, who eventually we started talking about addiction and sobriety with, which was completely unplanned and unbelievable. And she was like, you need to start a podcast, which is something I had already been thinking of. And it was like, I just needed, that wasn't even a whisper. That was like a bitch slap. Like she was like, girl, start the podcast. I needed something. And that was it. It was like, she nudged me over the edge and here we are. So Samantha in San Francisco, amazing. Thank you. I love you. And here we go. So Erin, we are going to start with you just telling us your story, very much like what we would do if we were sharing in an AA meeting. Obviously disclose whatever you feel comfortable with, but what was it like out there in your addiction? what happened and what is it like now? And once we get through the arc of that story, we will put a spotlight on romance in recovery. Oh, let us not play that real life stuff is relentless, whether you're a recovering addict or a quote unquote normie. And so we want to share what that looks like, really dealing with real life issues, heartbreak, obsession, while we are navigating life in a sober way. So without further ado, Erin, tell us your story.
Yes, thank you. Erin, alcoholic. I feel like that's how we start. That's how we start in an AA meeting. That is how we start. Before we share, identify. What was it like? Oh my God. It's crazy when you get more sober time. Cause I just celebrated 8 years in November. When you get more sober time, it's like, oh my God, it's not that I forget what it was like, but there's like, so I'm just like such a different person. It's hard to even like remember, who I was and what was it like and what I was doing, it's such a different life. But, I feel like I usually just start with like what it was like before I even started drinking and using. And, cause I feel like I was born an alcoholic. I think you're born an alcoholic. I don't think it's something that like, you're like, I'm going to just choose to be an alcoholic or a drug addict. I'm going to, I don't think that. I think you're born with a disease of alcoholism and it runs in my family. And so not surprising. I was, born with it. And what it looked like before I even started to pick up and use and drink, it looked like just complete, utter, like self-centered fear and obsession, like complete self-centered fear and obsession, with what other people thought of me mostly. And just being so like consumed with self, and feeling like everyone else had like figured out like what life was supposed to be like and how to be happy and how to be sad and how to have emotions. And I was like, just like swimming upstream. Like it was like, I didn't understand how someone that maybe on the outside, like presented that like I had shit together, I was smart. I was a good athlete. I had friends. I was a good ballerina. Like I had a lot of the external things that are quote unquote like normal. And in the inside, I was like an emotional mess, and fear is the best way I could describe it. I also suffer from anxiety and have been diagnosed with like generalized anxiety disorder. I've also been diagnosed with OCD. So it's not like surprising that I had this obsessive, anxious thoughts running through my brain and pulsating through my veins. And so when I was 15 and somebody invited me to a party and handed me a Zima, that was my first drink.
Zima.
Which for those of you youngsters out there that might not know what they are, it was like version of like a Sprite. And like before like Mike's Hard Lemonade, like Zima was like the drink that you drank, like if you didn't want to taste alcohol or whatever. And so, so somebody handed me a Zima and I was just like, like that relief of like, oh my God, I'm not feeling anxious. I'm just feeling like I'm happy and I'm joyful and I'm like free. I'm free of this obsession. And what happened, pretty much after that was like, one was not enough. Like I needed more, like I wanted more, I needed more. How am I going to get more? And so then the obsessive thoughts turned like a little bit away from myself and a little bit more like, how am I going to get more of that? How am I going to get more Zima? Consequently, or subsequently or whatever, concurrently, I also tried pot that night for the first time. And I remember like smoking pot. I can't even remember if it was a joint or if it was a bong or if it was a bowl. I don't know. It was some sort of like inhalation, obviously, of the marijuana. And I didn't get high. I remember not getting high. And I remember people saying that, like, oh, your first time, you don't really get high. But again, it was that like sensation of like, I want more. And so there we go. Like that was it, off to the races. Like the second time I smoked pot, whatever it was, joint, bong, bowl. I remember like, again, like just that feeling of like contentment and ease and the, what I believe my mental illness or my self-centeredness. In AA, they say like, we're just self-centered, we're just thinking of self. And so whether it's the mental health or the alcoholism, like to me, it doesn't really matter. It's like all of that went away. And I was like happy and joyful and free. And then I quickly picked up other drugs. Like in high school, I found cocaine, and that was amazing. I was so scared to do it, but it was almost this like, I'm scared to do it, but like, I want to do it. And I felt like, using cocaine made me cool. And that's all I wanted to be, was like cool, popular, pretty, like all the things. And I felt like cocaine, pot, acid, alcohol, like all of those things were like the key to like the things I wanted: popular, cool, pretty. People liked me. People thought I was funny. People thought I was, people thought. And I continued to do that until I was 35. So I started when I was 15, drinking and using. I don't think I had more than like maybe 2 weeks sober, but like in that 20 years, I might have had like, 2 weeks sober from something and was like still drinking or still smoking or whatever. I remember when I was 22, I graduated college. I was able to like still do the things. I was able to graduate high school. I was able to go to college. I was able to really not have a lot of people know that I was drinking and using. My parents found some things and they were not happy. But they weren't like intervention. Like it wasn't like that. It was like, stop bringing pot into the house, or like, I got arrested when I was 18 for possession.
Did you? I don't think I knew that.
Yeah. It was so stupid. I was at a concert in Great Woods, which is like this like place in Foxborough, Mass. Well, I think it's now like where the Patriots play, but it used to be this, or maybe it's like adjacent. I don't know. It was this like outside concert venue. And I went to some summer concert that I didn't have tickets for. And we went into Boston to get our weed. And we went down to the parking lot. We were rolling joints, smoking joints. I, of course, couldn't just travel into this concert where I didn't have even tickets for. Couldn't just travel in there with the joint I had. I had to travel in there with the half ounce that I'd also purchased. So I'm smoking the joint. I've got the half. Yeah, that's part of my addiction. It's like, I want more. I need to have more. I also have to control the situation, right?
Oh yeah. The backup plan, everything. Got to make sure you run out. Yes.
Oh yeah. So that was that. Cops saw me smoking a joint. I flicked it. They asked me what I flicked. I said a cigarette. They like didn't believe me. They somehow searched me. I don't know. Like I maybe it was illegal. I don't know. But I handed them over my half ounce. They arrested me. I went to a jail in Foxborough, Massachusetts, and I got out in like 3 hours. Like it was so stupid. I had to pay a $25 bail, which I was like, here you go, and then show up in court the next morning. And so I show up in court the next morning, and the judge is like, okay, this is your first offense. It's marijuana. And you just have to be on a 3-month continuance, which is basically like an easy version of a probation. So if you don't get arrested in the next 3 months, we'll drop it from your record. I was like, sweet. I mean, I didn't even, I'm this like white girl like that. It's part privilege, part, Massachusetts had this kind of like leaning towards leniency on weed anyway in the late 90s, which they eventually legalized. But anyway, so my parents found my court record or something, or ticket or whatever. And oh boy, but like I was like, don't worry about it. I got it under control. And so, so I moved out to Los Angeles when I was 22, thinking maybe if I live in Los Angeles, maybe Boston's the problem. Maybe Los Angeles will be a better fit. I also thought I had this idea of becoming an actress, a famous actress. And I thought, if I become a famous actress, I won't like have time to like drink or I'll be in the public. Like I was like, so in this odd little fantasy.
Wait, hold on. You thought that fame would protect you from addiction.
Isn't that funny?
That is incredible. Your sweet little naive self.
Yeah, protect and or allow me like this key again, this like private entrance into this like, world where, I would get the great parties and the great Coke and the great, everything. And so moving out to Los Angeles, I had this fantasy, like one of becoming like famous, but then kind of also becoming like normal with like my drug and alcohol use. And it quickly was shown to me that now, like wherever you go, there you are. Like I was in Los Angeles. It was like October. I'd been out here for like a month or two. I went out with some girlfriends that I had met from acting school. I went to the Formosa Cafe in Santa Monica Boulevard, drinking a ton. I'm in line. I meet this guy with really nice eyes and he's like, you want to do Coke? And I'm like, yep. And there we go. That was like my boyfriend for the next like 8 months. Like, but it wasn't really my boyfriend. It was whatever. It was so stupid. So on and on and on. I started giving up Coke when I had like a panic attack. I ended up, at 24, I ended up becoming a preschool teacher and I did Coke this one weekend. And again, my Coke use towards the end looked like, I'm just going to do it in my room by myself. It's no longer social. I'm no longer telling people I have Coke because I don't want to share. So I ended up just doing a bunch in my room or maybe had a party at my apartment. I don't know. And I got, fucked up, cleaned up the next day, like on Sunday, go to work on Monday. And I have what I'm thinking is a heart attack. Like I'm feeling like it's a heart attack. I go to my boss. By the way, I'm teaching preschool. I go to my boss and I tell them like, I don't know what's going on. My heart is like, I don't think I'm having a heart attack, but maybe it's a panic attack. I don't know. So she takes me to the ER. I go to the ER. She's like, do you want me to wait with you? I'm like, no, that's okay. Because I want to be honest with the nurse, and they go off, and if you have a heart problem, they pretty much take you right away in the ER. And I told the nurse, hey, I did a bunch of Coke this weekend. I kind of think maybe I'm having a reaction. She's like, oh, don't worry, honey. Like, yeah, you're just coming down, you're probably having a panic attack. So they gave me, downers to, anyway. So after that, I got scared of using Coke. And so I was just drinking and I thought my life was like, great, I was still pretty like dependent on alcohol to have a good time. I was still obsessed about finding it. How can I get it? Happy hours, drinking wine with dinner on a Tuesday night. Like I was doing all the things that I thought were like, quote unquote, normal alcohol behavior. But in looking back and really reflecting, it's like, that's not like every night is not normal. And so when I was about 28, 29, a friend of mine introduced me to Vicodin. She had just had a back surgery. She's like, you want to take a Vicodin? I got like 90 of them. I'm like, sweet, let's take some Vicodin.
Is that a trick question?
Yeah, sure.
Obviously.
Sure. I'd had some when I got my wisdom teeth out and that was awesome. So I was like, yeah, let's take some Vicodin. And then my boyfriend at the time, who then became my husband, had a friend who was getting Norco from a doctor. So we ended up getting them from him for a while, which is like a stronger Vicodin, but less acetaminophen, because that's not good for your liver, of course, because I care about what's going in my body.
I mean, yes, so thoughtful of you.
Yeah. And it was so funny. I remember we would go down to this guy's house. He lived in the South Bay. And my ex got weed from him. He was his pot dealer, because my ex was a pot dealer. So he was like a bigger shark. And so we would go down there and I remember if I would go, the only thing I could think about was whether or not he would give us Norco. Would Gabe give us Norco? Would Gabe give us, and then if Gabe gave us Norco, Aaron was in a good mood. If Gabe didn't give us Norco, I was fucking pissed. And it's like all I could think about. And I knew I had to, do something, because I was like, okay, I have to control my mood. So I ended up contacting Gabe and being like, hey, what doctor do you go to? Gave me the doctor's name, doctor's number, exactly what to say. And so I did. I made an appointment. I go see this doctor in the South Bay. I tell him I have a back pain from an injury, which is not true. And the only thing that worked was Norco. And he ended up giving me, I think 60 with like 2 refills. And then he ended up, we worked up to like 90, 120, 150 with like all 2 to 3 refills every time I went. And I would know exactly how long I had. And at the beginning of this, drug addiction, because I feel like that's where my alcoholism kind of really took off. I would know exactly how long I had to, get to the next prescription without, red flags going off. And then it got to a point where, 5-6 years into this addiction, I couldn't do it anymore. I was up to like 30 pills a fucking day. Like, I'm only getting 120. Like, I'm going through them in like 4 days. Like, that's crazy. So I ended up going on Craigslist and finding like people that were selling it illegally. There's like this like black market on Craigslist. And I would go to these like shady spots in East LA or Venice or wherever. And I would, again, like not even thinking that anything bad was going to happen to me, because I'm so obsessed with, I have to get the drugs. Like the second fear of like, could I get arrested? Could I get robbed? Could I get fake pills? Like none of it mattered as much as getting the drugs. And so I did that pretty much up until I was 35. And a little bit before that, when I was 33, it was right before I got married. I got married in 2012. And I'd given my pills to my partner, my then fiance. We were about to get married in 6 months. And I kept stealing them back from him without his knowledge. And so this one weekend, I give him the pills. It was Super Bowl weekend, I think. And I asked for them back because we were going to watch the Super Bowl and I wanted to have my pills and my alcohol. And he was like, you just gave them to me. Like, I think you have a problem, is what he said to me. I think you have a problem. And I kind of admitted to him, like, I think I do too. And
Can I stop you for 1 second and just ask you a question? Because I think in the normie community, and when we say normie, we're talking about people who do not have an addictive mind or gene or lifestyle, right? And so I think there's this idea still that we have the power of choice. And when things get really, really bad, why do we let it get that way? Don't we see, don't you realize everything you've lost, everyone you've hurt? Can you just talk for a second when you're in that space where you said, the first thought and the most important thought was, how do I get more? Where do I get them? Even though there might've been other thoughts like, are they going to be fake? Are they going to be spiked? Am I going to get raped? Am I going to get killed? Mm-hmm. Do you feel like you had a choice at that point in your addiction?
Yeah, that's a great question and a great point. I think I hear it all the time, like, oh, why couldn't you just stop? Or, oh, I can just stop. And to me, it's like, I have no choice. Like, I'm completely powerless over this addiction and this first thought that like, I have to get more. How can I get more? I got to get more. It's like this like huge monster inside of you that like puts everything else, like stuffs it down. So yeah, the other thoughts of like, maybe I'll be in danger. Maybe I do have a problem. Maybe I should stop. All those thoughts that I think we probably all have and share as addicts and alcoholics, like it's not as loud. It's not as loud. It's like so quiet and we can't listen to it because this other thought is just so much greater. And I think as and to me, I think that's what makes it a disease. It's like you don't have power over diseases, right? Like, you get cancer, there's nothing, you didn't choose to get it, and whatever, like you don't. And so I think the same is with alcoholism. It's like, I didn't choose to be an alcoholic. I just got it, just got it. So yeah. So
you were saying that your ex said to you, I think you have a problem. And you actually said back, I think I do too.
Yeah. I think that was the first time I admitted to someone else, to myself out loud, yeah, I do too. And so he ended up talking to his friend Gabe, who also had, I think, a problem. I wonder if Gabe's sober.
Hey, Gabe, are you out there?
Yeah. And he had a friend who was also, had a problem with the pills. Right. And he told us about this drug called Suboxone. So I end up getting on this drug called Suboxone, which is like a, opiate replacement. And it basically just stops your withdrawals, but it's still like an opiate itself. And, yeah, I mean, that is basically what happened, like, or what it was like. I didn't get too far on Suboxone. I was on it for about a year and a half, but I really just used it as a crutch before, when I finished my Norcos, because I was still taking Norcos, even though I told my ex I stopped, and I was still drinking, which my ex didn't care about. My ex didn't care about anything but the pills. Like, he was very much like, you have a problem with the pills. Like, your problem isn't like the vodkas that you have or the wine that you drink. Like, the problem is, and I thought that too. Like, I thought that too before coming in. I think coming into the program and realizing that, like, all substances are really the same. It's just alcohol in a different form. So yeah.
Amen.
So
Hold on. Let's stop there for 1 second too, because I think that's such a common misunderstanding about addiction too. I think that I know I came up against that when I was getting sober from, the people in my life who partied with me. And of course, me stopping shined a bright light on the fact that they still partied and that something maybe was wrong with them too. And my dad was actually one of those people, we were drinking buddies, and he would constantly say, you don't think you could just have a drink? You don't think it was just, the pills? What if you just don't do the pills? What if you just don't do cocaine? You can have a glass of wine, can't you? And when we say everything from the neck up that changes our mindset, we mean that. It does not matter, right? You might as well just substitute the word alcohol with cocaine, with Norcos. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. So if you're out there and you're like, God, I would just love it if, like, my significant other, who I think has a problem with pills, could just, like, not do that, but, still totally have a glass of wine and, like, clink the champagne on New Year's Eve. You're not fully understanding yet what addiction actually looks like. So please keep listening if you're that person. Okay, go on.
Oh,
Erin.
Yeah. Cause I would, if I didn't have my pills, maybe there was a lapse in the prescription. Like I said, maybe I couldn't get it for another week legally. So, and maybe I couldn't contact anybody. So I'm about to go into withdrawals. So maybe I pop some Suboxone, but I'm definitely going to still drink, and maybe I get some somas, because he also was giving me somas, and maybe I'll take those until, again, it's just like, you replace whatever. If you're a true addict and alcoholic, you will replace whatever your drug of choice is with something else, because you just need to constantly feed that monster. And so, yeah, when it was 2013, the summer of 2013, and I was about to start a new position at my job. I was like a teacher still, but I was going to start a new teaching position that I had wanted for a long, long time. And I was going to have my own classroom. Like, it was amazing. And I had a thought over the summer, like, I have to stop, I have to stop this, like, insanity of 40 Norcos a day, because I'm about to, like, when I was working, I would try to just take as much as maybe like 6 to 10. So I wasn't necessarily high, but I wasn't in withdrawals. And then after work, I could get, maybe a little bit more. I was just like, I just can't see myself, like, doing this in this new like classroom position, you know? And I told my ex husband, who was my husband at the time, you know, I just came clean. I said that I had been lying to him. I was taking Norco. I wasn't just taking Suboxone. And I think I had a problem. And I started going to a psychiatrist who recommended treatment. And I was like, no. No. I'm not that bad. And then what do you know? I leave the psychiatrist and I'm going to the dog beach with my dog. And I am like popping 6 Norcos as I'm driving. And I'm like, wow, like I can't even make it like an hour without like pills. And I'm telling people like I have a problem, and I'm still like in some sort of denial that even though I'm saying I have a problem, it's not that bad. But then I'm like taking, 6, 8 Norcos as I'm driving off. And so I think that weekend, I ended up looking up some like treatment centers, because she had recommended like maybe going to outpatient if inpatient wasn't an option. And I just didn't feel like it was. I just started this new job. I was just like, I can't take off, and look, everybody's story is different, because I think there's some people that maybe need to like tell that job, like, I got to go away for a couple months. I was fortunate enough to find an outpatient program that would take me. And I went Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays from like 5 to 9 or 6 to 9. And that was my journey into sobriety. It was kind of it wasn't this like one moment, this one like moment where, oh, I have to get sober. It was this like kind of couple months over the summer of just this like, I don't think I can do this anymore. And this more, there was always within those 20 years of drugs and alcohol, there was always this like, what would it be like to just not get high or not get drunk? I remember when I was like 18 smoking weed in the car, what would it be like if I didn't need weed to like feel normal? I remember thinking that, and I would go, I often tell this in my story, I would go to like Whole Foods and I would really like envy the people that like could walk around and I didn't think they were drunk or high. Like they could just go out to the grocery store and just be normal and pick up the fucking kale and the whatever. And like, and I can't even do that without, popping pills and having a drink. And so October 1st, 2013 was my first sobriety date. I entered that program, I think that week. And I had just gotten sick. I was really sick, like with a cold. And so it was a really nice time, I think, because I wasn't even interested in really drinking or getting high. I mean, I had to go through withdrawals. That was really challenging. But you get over that in a couple of days, and well, you get over the real bad stuff, the like diarrhea and the like cramps and the nausea, the chills, like that all usually leaves you in a couple of days. And that's why I would tell anybody listening, like, don't take Suboxone because it's like, it's real hard to come off of that. It just prolongs it, and your sleep is what's real fucked up. For like 60 days, my sleep was like so fucked up. Like I couldn't, that was the hardest thing to get over. And so, yeah, so I went into this program, like I said, 3 nights a week. They were strongly encouraging me to attend recovery meetings. They said it doesn't have to be 12-step, but like, we really recommend that they had either like AA or like smart recovery was the other thing they recommended me. And I was just like, I don't fucking want to do those things. I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to do this program for 4 months, and I'm going to like learn how to be normal, and I'm going to get clean, and I'm going to get normal. That's just what I thought. They asked me like, who are your sober friends? And I didn't have any. I didn't have any sober friends. I only had girls that were pregnant that I knew didn't drink. I was like, I have pregnant friends, but that's about it. And so in my group, there were like maybe like 7 people in my group, and they had all started at different times. But there was this one guy, Mark, And he started like the same week as me. And he was like a cutie. He was just like such a cutie. He had those like wire rim glasses and just looks like so cute. And him and I really bonded because one, we were like both new. We started at the same time. Our drugs of choice were the same. We were both addicted to opiates. And anyway, and he just was like really, he was just a rad person. And then there were like a couple other, there's this guy, Marcus, that was addicted to crystal meth. There's this other guy, Jesse. There's this chick, Casey. Like there was just like, it was like this little group. And Mark and I were outside talking one night, maybe on our break. And he was like, I don't know, we was talking about AA. He'd been sober before. He had been sober when he was in his early 20s, and he was like approaching 30, I think, relapse, whatever. And he said, you know, I just don't think I've seen anyone stay sober without AA. And that was like just a little like nudge, you know, that I needed, because I was thinking about checking out the AA meeting that they had there on Saturdays. And so I was like, and he's like, you want to go to the meeting on Saturday? Like, I'll meet you. And I was like, okay. So I went to this meeting that they had at the center. It was a bunch of like alumni, but it was like an AA meeting. And that was my first experience with Alcoholics Anonymous. I was like so scared of it. I thought that for some reason, I thought treatment was like, okay, but that AA was like going to just be a bunch of losers, like a bunch of like old men that like went to war and were just, you know, I thought it was going to be that, or I thought it was going to be a bunch of like heroin junkies. You know, I think in Alcoholics Anonymous, you learn a lot about like your contempt prior to investigation and your like really black and white thinking. And I think that's what I think it was like, again, contempt without even any knowledge. Had never been to an AA meeting, but for some reason thought I knew what it was going to be like. And then I thought it was either going to be like this or like this. And that there was no room for this like gray area of like, there are literally so many different meeting types. And the one I ended up, you know, really like finding first was this meeting on Saturday with like just these like normal people that had jobs and just had an alcohol problem, had alcoholism, and we're just like, you know, getting sober. It was like a speaker meeting that there was also like shares. And so it was kind of just like this, like where the person tells their story and you start to like identify, and they start to share things that they go through where you're like, wow, they were able to stay sober through that. They were able to stay sober through, you know, divorce, or they were able to stay sober through, you know, losing a parent or losing a kid or whatever it was. And so you start to wonder like, okay, well, if they can stay sober, like maybe I can, you know, but I didn't have a solid footing in AA at that point. This was October 2013. I was, you know, going to these like meetings after work. But I wasn't really going to many 12-step meetings. And around the end of October, that little voice, you know, kept coming back in like, hey, like you should really contact your doctor, because if you don't keep in touch with him, then you might lose the constant like supply of Norco. Like when you want to, you know, take it again, like in 4 months, right? Because I had this 4-month, like I'm going to be clean and sober for 4 months. You should probably like just call them and like make an appointment, and like you don't need to take it. And you know, again, I think that's my alcoholic brain. That's my first thought. And I followed that first thought, and I ended up going, I think I had an end of November end of October, beginning of November appointment with him. He doesn't know anything. Like the last time I saw him was probably September. So he thinks this is totally normal, like timeline. He gives me the things I need. I go to the pharmacy, I pick up my bottle, which again, if you're a drug addict or alcoholic, you know, there's almost this relief in like going to the place where you're going to get the thing before you even take the drug or the drink.
Oh, yeah.
Like there's this
it's
relief
like
of like
Pavlov's dogs. You're so conditioned.
Yeah.
You probably already had some kind of dopamine response just going and waiting in line.
Yeah. Yeah. So I do, I go, I don't take the pills. They're in my trunk, and I don't take the pills for a day. I don't take the pills for a day. I don't, I'm like, oh, maybe I got this, maybe I can choose to not take the pills. Maybe I cannot take it. Cause look, I'm not taking it. They're in my trunk. I'm not taking them. Going to my meetings and my treatment meetings. And I go, it's like a Veterans Day weekend, and I was going to get my hair done. My girlfriend does my hair, and I was going to get my hair done on a Friday. And it was like, I don't know, maybe November 9th or 10th or something like that. And it's a Friday. I go to work. I'm like, I'm just going to take 2 pills. I'm just going to take 2 pills today. So I take 2 pills. I then proceed to take like 2 more at lunchtime. I then proceed to take like 4 more before I go to see my girlfriend. I then, we go out to drinks afterwards. I take like 6 more. So like, I'm up to like 16 or something. And I'm like, wow, I just said I was going to take 2, huh? And that was the first experience I had with truly, being powerless. We talked about this a little earlier. When you do, enter AA, if you eventually decide that's for you, which I did. Step 1 is we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and our lives had become unmanageable. And I'd heard, I'd been to a few AA meetings at this point, and I'd heard that step. And it wasn't until I thought about, wow, I tried to just take 2, but I'm on 16, that I truly understood what being powerless over alcohol and life becoming unmanageable felt like. Like, I was like, oh, like it's that I truly cannot have a choice. Once alcohol or drugs enter my system, I don't know how much I'm going to take. I can't just take 2. Maybe I can, but I can't control that. Like, I am truly like a slave. I often, think about it like being a slave to your addiction. Like, you are just feeding this monster. And,
can I ask you for a second, in that moment, the emotion when you think back to it that comes to mind? You felt powerless. That's definitely part of it.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I think that I was feeling this, I had talked, I've been on my, like, what happened for a long time.
Okay.
But I had talked earlier about, before I got sober, and that like obsessive thinking, right? Of what others thought of me, or how I was perceived by others, or whatever. And that, in that, October to November 2013, when I was like trying to get sober, that was like so present and so high. And so like, I remember that day of like, I was like, oh, I'm going to just be like in such relief when I get these 2 pills in my system. And so I think when I started taking the pills, it was almost this like relief. But then when I was on, pill 4 or pill 8 or whatever, it was almost this like shame of like, what is wrong with me? Like, why can't I just take 2, And that happened a lot in my using. It was like, why can't I just do this thing that it's like broken. I would promise myself I'm only going to take 8. And then I would end up taking 16, or, and I used to keep track of like how many I took, just so I almost was like, okay, well, like I have enough for like the next week or whatever. And it was this like, broken promises. You promise yourself something, you break it. Promise yourself something, you break it. And it's just this like constant like spiral of that. And I think, I don't know, like that, those were the big emotions for me. It was mixture of like relief with like shame and disappointment. And I think that weekend was kind of that like, shit, I'm an alcoholic. I was able to kind of admit that I was an alcoholic. I was able to admit I'm powerless over alcohol, and my life became unmanageable in that instance. I had a hard time relating to my life becoming unmanageable, because I was like, well, I have the job, I have the husband, I have the nice apartment, I have a great dog. have friends. Like my family doesn't know. I didn't think that my life was unmanageable, but
Yeah. Also, let's just pause because this part just gets me every time in the rooms, still in the rooms, addicts, alcoholics who are in recovery will say that they had a high bottom. That's what
yeah,
Erin is describing right now. A high bottom, if you hear that term, means it all looked real good on the outside, even though on the inside, you were a goddamn mess. You hated yourself. You felt like
yeah.
shit. You were poisoning yourself. You were lying
Mhm.
to yourself and to everybody else. So only an alcoholic would consider that a high bottom.
Right,
Only an
right.
alcoholic, right?
Yeah,
Basically, you're spiritually bankrupt, but you still got your job. So shit's all good. Like,
yeah,
wow. That's just,
yeah.
it's so fucking ironic to me. And so anyway, just wanted to let the public know what it is
Yeah.
you are describing because it stops a lot of us from actually understanding that we have a problem.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think if I think for years I wanted to be sober, but I felt like maybe I'm not that bad, right? I watched the show Intervention and I was like but I'm not that bad.
Yep.
So, okay, you judge yourself against like these like really extremes. Um and yeah, so that weekend I was relapsing and subsequently or whatever, not using that word again correctly, but my husband had asked for a divorce that weekend. And wow, like he didn't know I was relapsing, by the way. He didn't know I was relapsing, but maybe, like spiritually he did or something. I don't know. He asked for a divorce. I broke down. I was like, you cannot do this to me. I'm trying to get sober here. I'm like, I cannot deal with this. Like, I cannot have this on my plate right now. And he was like, okay. Like kind of backed off a little bit and was like, all right, well, I'm not going anywhere anytime soon, but like, I'm just not happy. And I don't think that this is going to work out. And I was just like, all I clung to was like, I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. So I go into my treatment center on Monday and I tell them I relapsed. They were pretty flexible with relapsing to a certain extent. But they really wanted to hold me accountable. So I had a meeting with my counselor and like, what are you going to do differently? And I just said, I guess I'm going to go to more AA meetings. Like I didn't really want to, but I thought that I needed to say that. And I thought maybe I needed to do that. And that guy, Mark, that was telling me I've never seen anybody get sober without AA. That was also in my head. And that wasn't something I was really doing. And so I ended up, going to a meeting that, next night, a women's meeting. I asked a woman to be my sponsor. She seemed like she had so much serenity. Like she was I don't even remember what she was talking about. She's talking about being sad. That's what she was talking about. She's talking about being sad and like curling up in a ball on her bathroom floor. I don't even remember from what, but the second part of what she said was like how much she knew that she could stay sober no matter what. She doesn't drink or use no matter what. And that God, God has a plan and God has her. And I was just like, whoa, like, I don't know I don't remember what was going on for her personally, but I just remember I wanted that like peace and serenity that she seemed to have within. And so I asked her to be my sponsor. We ended up meeting. I don't even remember, at like a coffee shop, like a week or two later. She asked me about, what I thought about God. And I was like, I don't know if I believe in God. And she just was like, look, it can be whatever you want, but you are not going to stay sober without a higher power. And just like Mark said, like, I've never seen anybody stay sober without AA. She's telling me now, you're not going to stay sober without a higher power. And I was just like, ugh, fuck. And I remember telling this to Mark and what she said. And Mark was like, well, could you at least make like your higher power, not you? Like, could you at least make it like, not you? And, maybe you're not in charge of everything. Maybe you're not in control of everything. And I was like, yeah, I could do that. And he talked a lot about my dog. I remember he was like, think about like your dog, like how you guys came to be. Like maybe that, like, maybe your dog can just be your higher power. And I ended up making like the rooms of AA my higher power. That was my first higher power, was just this group of alcoholics, because I didn't really know what to do with the higher power stuff. I think that turns a lot of people off too. But I think I think, cause a lot of, I think I thought this too. Like, I thought it was maybe a religious thing, and it's so not. Like, it's not a church. It's not a cult. It's not like a religious organization. It's just this spiritual force that like can literally be anything you want. And it doesn't even have to be anything. Like I said, like at the beginning, it was just like the group. And I started working the steps with this woman. Her name was LA. And oh man, like I went through so much in that early sobriety. I ended up having to get a divorce, which we'll probably talk about when we talk about our romance topic.
Yes.
But yeah, that's kind of what happened. And then what it's like now is I'm 8 years into the sobriety journey. As I kind of said at the beginning, I can't imagine. I can't imagine. I don't even know what I'm like such a different version of myself. I talked a little bit at the beginning too about, that happy, joyous, free feeling that I had from using and drinking early on. And now it's like, I just get that, like being clean and sober. Like, I just get that having worked the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous.
That actually leads perfectly into these questions that I want to ask, because, and by the way, I think if you're open to a second episode, like a follow-up, so that after everybody hears your story, we can do like a sober deep dive into romance.
Sure.
So that way it's like a part 1 and part 2, because this is such a good intro. And there's so many things we keep stopping and talking about to break the silence about, and also to create a conversation and understanding around addiction in ways that I think are so important that people still just don't get. So I don't want to rush us through the romance part, because I think that deserves its own entire attention, how all of that presents. So the questions, and you were talking sort of about one of them, but let's just start right now with, here we are, we just heard this whole incredible journey of what your addiction looked like. And, I would venture to guess that at that time, let's say in the height of your using, your perfect day, I don't know exactly what it would be, but it would be completely centered around you getting all the drugs and alcohol that you needed to feel like you could escape that need to be perfect, that feeling of less than, right? It would be whatever the day would be, drugs and alcohol would be at the center. So what I want to know is 8 years in to your recovery, how would you describe your perfect day?
Oh yeah. That's a great question. And so true about like, prior to getting sober, it would be so centered around getting my drugs of choice. And that would be a perfect day. And so now in sobriety, a perfect day is like, I get to sleep in. I get up, I get to have like a delicious cup of coffee first thing. I try to start my day with some kind of like spiritual practice. Lately I've been into reading the big book, pages 86, 88 on awakening. And then I like to just like get a little quiet, like maybe like a 5-minute meditation. And then, ideally I would be going out into the world. Like it's like, on the weekends, like I love being able to like move my body and exercise and maybe get like out in nature, go hiking or go to like a Pilates class. I'm like so into Pilates, or a soul cycle class, or like, again, like things that I would love to have done. And probably, I worked out when I was drinking and using, but it's not the same. Like, it's like so joyful to like be actually present and clear-minded when you can connect with your mind body. And then like, spending as much time with my loved ones as possible. Like, my dog that I like love so much that has been with me like this whole journey. And, you know, my partner that I have now, that's like incredible, because romance was a big part of my struggle for
dot, dot, dot.
7 years, we'll say. You know, beautiful friends like you that I have now in my life. Yeah, that's like my perfect day. You know, I also love going to AA meetings, and it's been hard with them on Zoom still, most of them that I go to. And with the holidays, you know, it's hard to get to the meetings. I miss them.
Yeah.
And whenever I go to an AA meeting, it's like working out. Like I always feel better. So yeah, that's my perfect day now.
I love that. Oh,
Mm.
and then I want to know, because I'm sure there's so many iterations of it, but right now, today, in this moment, what is your concept of a higher power?
You know, I feel like I was talking about this maybe with you or someone recently. For me, what my higher power has become is this like highest self version of me. And so I often think about, you know, early on, I kind of thought the higher power had to be this like external force, this external thing. You know, it was the meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous for a really long time. And it's been like nature, and it's been like the ocean, and it's been like the sky, and like it's been these different forces. The solar system. I was big on the solar system for a while as my higher power.
That's a good one.
Oh my God. Talk about something that is outside of yourself that you have no control over. That's just so expansive. But now, you know, it's kind of evolved. It's still all of those things, but it's almost like all of those things like within me. I heard once in a meeting that God works within you without you. And I was just like, ooh, like, yeah, like I like to think about God like living inside of me now, as this highest version of myself. Like, what would highest self Erin do in certain situations? And also, like, you know, big focus on my intuition, and like how like that to me is like a little God voice. Like that's just like my little God voice, like kind of nudging me in the direction that I should be going. Like my intuition is telling me this thing that I should probably do, or this thing that I probably shouldn't do. And so being able to kind of be more clear-headed and believe that my higher power is like within me. That's kind of my version of my higher power now. I call it God a lot just because it's like an easy thing to say, but I interchange those words a lot. But yeah.
Amazing. I so relate to that. Love that so much. And that's a whole other episode, right? Like, how does an addict get to a point where they know the difference between the addict voice and the intuitive voice? So we will see, we will bookmark that, because that's a huge one.
Yeah, I love that.
I mean, frankly, even for like a normal person who's not suffering from addiction, it's like, how do you tweeze out the difference between ego voice, right? Or fear voice and intuitive voice? It's kind of the same thing. It's like, it's sort of a life-changing thing to get to know. So I love that so much. The last question I wanted to ask was, can you tell me one thing that the Erin who's speaking to me right now would say, something loving and compassionate to her former addicted, untreated self?
Well, yeah. Gosh, so much things have been coming to my mind. I think the one thing that kind of kept coming up, like as you were talking about, because I think I kind of, when you were talking about the question, I kind of was like, I think I know where she's going with this. What would I say to my former self? And I think it would be like, just do it. Like, you've got this, like, you keep going towards that like light that I kind of always thought that maybe like maybe I should get sober, but I don't know how. Like, if I could tell myself, like, just try it. Like, you're going to love it. And like, I love you. Like, I love you. And, you're going to love this life, like I kind of see it as like, what would I say to myself to maybe like, not like course correct, because I do believe that my life unfolded as exactly as how it was supposed to. But yeah, just like, kind of a gentle, like nudge in the right direction. Like what Samantha did with the podcast. Austin, Ohio. Like, you got to start this podcast. And it was just that little like nudge that you needed. Like, I think for me, like Erin today would just love to say to Erin, like 2011, 2012, like you could so live a sober life and you would like so love it. You would really love it. You don't have to be scared. I think there was so much fear about getting sober. So much fear. And yeah, I think that's what I would say.
I love that. Oh my God. I love you so much.
I love you too.
Thank you so much for doing this with me. It was such a pleasure. And there were things that I learned about you after all these years of being friends. Like, you think you know your bestie, and then you just go, oh my God, there's more to know. There's more to learn.
Yeah.
And I just love you so, so much.
I love you too.
And we will do a second episode.
Sure.
Around romance. And in the meantime, if you're out there and this resonates with you, then maybe the next right thing for you is just to come back for the next episode. Maybe it's to find a virtual meeting or an in-person meeting. Maybe it's to call somebody you love. Maybe it's to give yourself a hug. I don't know what sounds right for you, but we're here and we're going to keep coming back for our sober lives. I love you, Erin.
I love you too.
I'm going to call you when this call is over.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye. Right, bye. Thanks for having me.
I wanna help you, but I don't know how. I wanna guide you, but I can't figure it out. So tell me what you need, and tell me where you bleed, and I will listen. I can listen. Oh, I will listen to you. You seem so stuck there, holding on to some old story, still going strong. So tell me what you did, and tell me how you lived, and I will listen. I can listen. Oh, I will listen to you. Where can you go now? Can I keep you from falling down? If you just keep floating, you won't drown. There's a knowing that can be found. If you listen, can you listen? Oh, I will listen to you. There's a voice deep inside you that will be there to guide you. So tell me, what do you hear? Can you quiet your worst fear? If you listen, can you listen? Oh, I will listen to you? Where can you go now? Can I keep you from falling down? If you just keep floating, you won't drown. There's a knowing that can be found. If you listen, I can listen.